It all started with a live TV show that had millions of viewers. The conversation was heated, as it often was on her show, and the topic of the Trump family came up. As soon as Melania Trump's name was mentioned, the host's demeanor changed. She smirked and made a comment that would soon stir a storm. Melania Trump? Please. She's nothing more than a trophy wife who doesn't even care about this country, the host said, her words laced with sarcasm and disdain. The audience reacted immediately. Some laughed, while others were visibly shocked. It wasn't uncommon for the host to express strong opinions, but this time, she had crossed a line. The remark was broadcast live, and it didn't take long for social media to explode with reactions. People were divided. Some praised the host for speaking her mind, while others were outraged by the blatant disrespect toward the former First Lady. But what no one expected was the response that would soon come from Donald Trump himself. Behind the scenes, Trump had heard about the insult within minutes. He had always been protective of his family, especially Melania, and he wasn't one to back down from a fight. He knew that the comment wasn't just an attack on his wife. It was an attack on his family's honor. As he watched the clip of the host's cruel words, Trump's anger simmered, and he began planning his response. Meanwhile, the liberal host continued with her show, unaware of the storm brewing. She had made her comment and moved on to the next topic, confident that she had delivered another memorable segment. But she had no idea what was coming her way. While the liberal host wrapped up her show and the day moved forward behind closed doors, Trump was preparing to fire back. His team was quick to gather information, and within hours, a plan was in motion. Trump wasn't going to let the insult slide, and he was going to make sure the host felt the full weight of his response. As Trump's team crafted the perfect message, the news of the host's comment spread like wildfire. Media outlets picked up the story, and soon it was everywhere. Headlines blared. Liberal host insults Melania Trump on live TV, and the clip of her comment went viral. Everyone was waiting to see how Trump would react, and he didn't disappoint. The next morning, Trump took to social media. His tweet was short but powerful, disgusting and disrespectful. Melania is a strong, intelligent woman who has done more for this country than this failed TV host ever will. Pathetic. The tweet exploded across platforms, gaining thousands of retweets and comments within minutes. Trump supporters rallied behind him, praising him for defending Melania. His critics, however, accused him of overreacting. But regardless of where people stood, one thing was clear. Trump had made his move, and the liberal host was now in the hot seat. As the day went on, the tension only grew. Trump's response was making headlines, and the liberal host was feeling the pressure. She hadn't expected Trump to react so quickly or so publicly, and now she had to figure out how to handle the backlash. Her social media accounts were flooded with comments, both in support and against her, and the weight of the situation began to sink in. By the time the liberal host returned to her studio for her next show, she was already feeling the heat. The atmosphere around her had shifted, and her usual confidence was shaken. She had thought her comment about Melania would be just another controversial moment on her show, but it had turned into something much bigger. Her producers were concerned, too. They knew the power of Trump's influence and how his response had ignited a firestorm. The ratings for the show had spiked, but for all the wrong reasons. The focus wasn't on the show's content. It was on the insult and Trump's brutal comeback. They knew the host would need to address it, but the question was, how? As the cameras rolled and the show began, the host struggled to maintain her usual composure. She knew that the audience was waiting for her to say something about the incident, and the pressure was immense. But instead of addressing it head-on, she decided to continue with her regular content, hoping to downplay the controversy. But it didn't work. Throughout the show, the comments section was filled with questions about her insult and Trump's response. Viewers weren't interested in the show's regular segments. They wanted to know how the host would defend herself. It was clear that her strategy of ignoring the issue was failing, and the tension in the studio was palpable. Behind the scenes, the host team was scrambling. They had underestimated how much of an impact Trump's response would have, and now they were dealing with the fallout. The host herself was beginning to regret her words. She had always been bold in her opinions, but this time she had gone too far. As the controversy continued to grow, the liberal host's life was being turned upside down. What had started as a throwaway comment on her show had spiraled into a full-blown media circus, and she was at the center of it. The attention wasn't just coming from the media. Her personal life was being affected, too. Friends and colleagues were reaching out to her, offering their opinions on the situation. Some supported her, encouraging her to stand by her words, while others urged her to apologize. The host herself was torn. She had never been one to back down, but she was beginning to realize that this time, the stakes were higher. The backlash was also starting to affect the network. Advertisers were expressing concerns about being associated with the controversy, and there were whispers that the show might lose sponsorships. The host's bosses were growing increasingly worried, and meetings were being held to discuss the future of the show. At this point, the host had two options. She could stand by her comment and continue to face the backlash, or she could issue a public apology. Neither option was appealing, but it was clear that something had to be done. The situation was spiraling out of control, and the longer she waited, the worse it would get. As the days went on, the pressure continued to build. The liberal host was no longer in control of the narrative. The media, the public, and Trump himself had taken over. It was a battle she hadn't anticipated, and now she had to figure out how to salvage her reputation before it was too late. While the liberal host was grappling with the consequences of her words, Donald Trump showed no signs of backing down. He had made his point clear, and now he was doubling down on his defense of Melania. In interviews and public appearances, he continued to speak about the incident, making it known that he wouldn't tolerate such disrespect toward his wife. Trump supporters rallied around him, praising his loyalty to Melania and his willingness to stand up to the media. As the days passed, the liberal host realized that the backlash wasn't dying down. No matter how hard she tried to ignore it or focus on other topics during her shows, the attention remained on the insult she had hurled at Melania Trump. Social media continued to erupt, and her inbox was flooded with both support and outrage. It was clear that the situation was far beyond her control, and even her most loyal supporters began to question whether she had gone too far. With the pressure mounting, the host finally decided to address the controversy head-on. She knew that continuing to avoid the subject would only worsen her situation. On her next show, she took a deep breath and, with the cameras rolling, offered a formal apology. "I realize that my comment about Melania Trump was disrespectful," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I may not agree with her politics, but that's no excuse to make personal attacks. For that, I am truly sorry." The apology was sincere, but the damage had already been done. Many viewers felt that it was too little, too late. While some accepted her words and praised her for owning up to her mistake, others weren't as forgiving. The media latched onto her apology, dissecting every word and questioning whether it was genuine or simply a strategic move to save her career. Donald Trump, unsurprisingly, wasn't impressed. He took to social media once again, calling the apology a weak attempt to save face, and reminding his followers that the host's original comment had revealed her true character. Trump's response reignited the controversy, and it became clear that the apology wouldn't be enough to end the saga. Behind the scenes, the host network was facing a dilemma. Ratings were still high, but the controversy was beginning to tarnish their brand. Sponsors were nervous, and the pressure to take action was growing. The network executives held meeting after meeting, trying to decide what to do with the host who had brought so much unwanted attention to their channel. As the controversy dragged on, the liberal host's once prominent career began to unravel. The apology she had offered didn't have the impact she had hoped for. Trump's unyielding stance and the continued media scrutiny kept the controversy alive, and the network was left with no choice but to make a difficult decision. One day, the host was called into a meeting with the top executives at the network. The mood in the room was tense, and she knew something big was coming. The executives explained that, while they appreciated her work and the ratings her show had brought in, The controversy had become too much for the network to handle. Sponsors were pulling out, and the negative attention was hurting their reputation. With a heavy heart, the network executives informed her that they had decided to let her go. The host, who had built her career on bold opinions and fearless commentary, was now facing the harsh reality that one comment had cost her everything. She had always prided herself on speaking her mind, but this time it had gone too far. As she packed up her things and left the studio for the last time, the host couldn't help but reflect on the chain of events that had led her here. It all started with a single comment about Melania Trump, a comment she had thought would pass unnoticed like so many others before it. But this time, she had underestimated the power of the Trump family's influence and the loyalty of their supporters. The news of her firing spread quickly, with headlines proclaiming, "Liberal host fired after insulting Melania Trump on live TV." Some of her supporters rallied to her defense, but it was clear that her time in the spotlight had come to an end. As for Donald Trump, he continued to stand by his wife and defend her honor. In interviews and public appearances, he spoke proudly of Melania and the strength she had shown in the face of criticism. The controversy eventually faded from the headlines, but the message was clear. Anyone who crossed the Trump family would face serious consequences. In the end, the liberal host learned a valuable lesson, one that came too late to save her career. Words of power, and in the world of politics and media, one misstep can change everything. After her public dismissal, the once outspoken liberal host found herself at a crossroads. The media frenzy died down, but the damage to her reputation was irreversible. Opportunities in the media world were scarce, and her credibility had taken a hit. The television world that once celebrated her opinions now turned its back on her. The fall from grace had been swift and unforgiving, and it was clear that finding her way back would be a monumental challenge. In the months that followed, the host retreated from the public eye. She avoided interviews and stayed off social media, knowing that any further attention would only reignite the controversy. But as time passed, she began to realize that hiding wouldn't solve her problems. If she was ever going to rebuild her career, she would have to confront her past head-on. With little else to lose, she started a personal blog, sharing her thoughts on the state of politics, media, and the lessons she had learned from her downfall. At first, the blog didn't gain much attention, but as she opened up about her experiences, her regrets, her struggles, and her determination to make a comeback, readers began to take notice. Some appreciated her honesty, while others remained skeptical, but the blog gave her a new platform to express herself. Slowly, the host started to rebuild her reputation. She was no longer the loud, opinionated figure who dominated cable news. Instead, she embraced a more reflective tone, admitting to her mistakes and focusing on the bigger picture. It wasn't easy, but she knew that if she was ever going to be taken seriously again, she had to show that she had learned and grown from the experience. While the former host was busy rebuilding her life, the Trump family's image remained as strong as ever. Donald Trump, never one to shy away from the spotlight, continued to defend his wife Melania whenever the topic of the insult came up in interviews. He used the controversy to solidify his family's brand, portraying them as victims of unfair media attacks. Melania, for her part, remained dignified and composed. She rarely spoke about the incident publicly, choosing instead to focus on her own initiatives. Her silence only added to the public's admiration of her grace under pressure. While many first ladies had faced criticism during their time in the White House, Melania's handling of the situation earned her even more respect from Trump supporters and some neutral observers alike. Barron, now older and more mature, had also grown more confident in the public eye. His public defense of his mother had marked a turning point for him, and he began to take on a more visible role within the Trump family. He no longer shied away from the cameras, and though he remained private about his personal life, his brief moment in the spotlight had left a lasting impression on the American public. As the years passed, the controversy over the insult faded, but the lesson it taught remained clear. The Trump family's unity was unbreakable, and anyone who tried to tear them down would face swift and public consequences. Despite the fallout from the insult, the former liberal host found a second chance in a place she never expected: podcasting. After months of blogging, her writing gained enough traction that she was invited to speak on various podcasts about her experiences. The podcast format allowed her to engage in deeper conversations without the constraints of live television, and soon she realized that this was where she belonged. Her podcast, titled Lessons in Public Life, became a modest success. In it, she spoke candidly about the pressures of being in the media, the mistakes she had made, and the broader issues facing society today. She invited guests from across the political spectrum, encouraging dialogue rather than divisive rhetoric. Although she never regained the level of fame she once had, her podcast developed a loyal following that appreciated her more nuanced approach. The host had changed. She was no longer driven by the need for sensationalism or shock value. Instead, she focused on creating thoughtful content, building bridges between different perspectives. While her career had taken an unexpected turn, she was finally at peace with her place in the media world. As she reflected on her journey, she realized that the moment she had insulted Melania Trump had been a turning point. It had cost her everything at the time, but in the end, it had also forced her to grow in ways she never would have expected. Looking back, the former liberal host often wondered what her life would have been like if she had never made that fateful comment. Would she still be on TV, delivering her bold opinions to millions of viewers? Or would she have eventually found herself in another controversy, one that might have been even more damaging? While she didn't have all the answers, she knew one thing for certain. The experience had taught her the value of humility. It had shown her that even in a world obsessed with quick sound bites and viral moments, there was something to be said for slowing down and thinking before speaking. It had also taught her that redemption was possible, but it required hard work and genuine introspection. As for Melania Trump, she continued to live her life with grace and dignity, never once letting the insult define her. In the end, the insult had said more about the host than it ever did about Melania. The story had come full circle. What started as a controversial moment on live television had led to a profound transformation for the host, a reaffirmation of the Trump family's strength, and a reminder to the public that words have power.